The government tells South West Water it has very, very hard questions to answer after a notifiable disease is discovered in the water supply. And joining us today, we have the Labour leader of Plymouth City Council, Tudor Evans, the Conservative MP for South East Cornwall, Cheryl Murray, and Ben Maguire, Liberal Democrat prospective parliamentary candidate for North Cornwall. Thank you all for joining me here today. Well, we start by looking at the story that's been making national news this week, the discovery of the parasite Cryptosporidium in the water supply in South Devon. Thousands of people have been told to continue boiling their water for another week after scores of people fell ill. There's been criticism of South West Water, which, having initially said the water was fine to drink, U-turned after discovering traces of the parasite in the supply network. South West Water's boss has said they fell significantly short and that she's truly sorry. Meanwhile, the Health Secretary in Devon on Friday had this message for the company.
In relation to South West Water, there will be very, very hard questions for South West Water to answer. At the moment, I think we probably need to give them the space to conduct their investigation. We know that they have identified the source of it, but the public will want to know how on earth that source happened, what was the chain of events that led to this, because of course we all understand the expectation that we all have that when we turn our taps on, that is clean drinking water, and we want to be able to trust it.
Well, fortunately, none of your areas are affected by this at the moment, at least. But Cheryl, presumably you'd agree with the Health Secretary?
Absolutely. I mean, South West Water need to be allowed to do their investigation, but this shouldn't be happening. And hopefully they have identified the source and they can rectify it as soon as possible. In the meantime, I think to actually say that the water was okay and then for people to find that they were poorly and basically it wasn't okay, questions need to be asked there.
I mean, there is an official investigation into this, Tudor, as you'd probably expect. I mean, this is a very serious issue. I mean, there is a statutory duty on water companies to monitor for this, and indeed the Drinking Water Inspectorate, which is a DEFRA agency involved in this investigation, warns them that it's a regulatory requirement. Failure to comply is an offence.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of failure to comply, a lot of failure to monitor, failure to comply with what they should be doing, failure to invest. So I don't know what led to this, but what I would say is it's part of a pattern where we can't rely on the water companies to do their job properly anymore, and that's why what Labour's wanting to do is to see tougher regulation, particularly on the people who make the decisions.
To point out, the company is not here to respond.
And in fairness, there is an investigation ongoing, and we need to find out the reason before we do that. The government have actually increased the amount of fines and been a lot tougher on the water companies over the last 12 months.
I suspect the others would like to open up the sewage pollution debate as well, but that's not a topic for today. Ben, your colleague Richard Ford, the Liberal Democrat MP for Tiverton and Honiton, said that the Chief Executive of South West Water should look at donating her pay to the compensation scheme. South West Water is no longer fit for purpose. The firm needs to be ripped up. Is that a bit over the top?
I don't think it is, actually, Martin. This is an absolute national disgrace. We've got a chief executive at South West Water that earns in excess of £1 million. She, at the moment, gets, I think, £500,000, or the best part of, plus about £1 million in bonuses.
She didn't accept a bonus last year.
Well, last year maybe not, but we've got poor people, and can I just put on the record how sorry I feel for people in Brixham and the areas affected? They're being given a measly £115 by South West Water, which is clearly totally inadequate for the harm that they've suffered.
So what would the Liberal Democrats replace South West Water with?
Oh, thanks for giving me the opportunity to come in there, Cheryl. We would actually look to finally hold these water companies to account, because Can I just finish my point?
That's just not to get this into the sewage pollution debate.
But you've just said
I'm trying to answer Cheryl's question.
Can we just let Ben explain what would...
If you just let me speak, Cheryl,
okay.
I'll gladly tell you. So the Liberal Democrats have said that we would actually turn water companies into public benefit companies. So it's a similar model to in the US. So companies like Ben & Jerry's, companies like Viva Systems, where they have a statutory obligation to look after the community good. So rather than dumping sewage in our rivers and seas and awarding their executives huge bonuses, which has happened on your watch, unfortunately, Cheryl, they would actually have a statutory obligation to look after their community and safeguard their consumers, rather than always putting profit over consumers, as your government seems to fully support.
How on earth would you get private water companies
when
to
I
do
was
that
when I was a kid, we used to get told when you go abroad, make sure you boil the water,
Yes.
and don't take it out of the tap. And now we're telling people from abroad when they come over here not to drink the water here. I mean, that's the state we've got into after 14 years of basically free reign.
What would Labour do
Yeah,
differently?
exactly.
Well, we've explained what we would do, and what we would do is make sure that the people at the very top of the organisations who allow this situation to obtain actually get fined and get held to account in a real, meaningful way. So rather than saying, I'm sorry and isn't it terrible, actually hit those people where it hurts, in their pockets and in their liberty, because they are holding customers to ransom. The privatisation model does not work, and these people basically have a license to print
So
money.
would you renationalise it then,
It's
Tudor?
Jeremy Corbyn's policy, but it's not Keir Starmer's.
Yeah.
No,
There have actually been votes on this in the House of Commons just this week.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll just finish my point. My point is that we've got to hit the people who are leading these companies much harder than we are at the moment. They're not accountable. They're not accountable, and we need to make them accountable. They take the money, they charge what they like, and they don't give a service back. And we need to
But
crack
if you
down
have a
on that.
privatised water system,
Yeah.
which you're committed to as the Conservatives are,
Yeah.
then it has to finance itself.
But you-
If you look
yes,
at the situation
but
in
I want-
Thames Water, what happens if these companies fall over?
But the point,
Exactly.
the point is, that's not happening, is it, South West Water? South West Water are making huge profits. The issue is they're not reinvesting those profits in the service. They're investing it in dividends to shareholders. There are a number of companies around the country. If you look at their results from last year, they actually they made less money than they paid out in dividends, and then they put the price of water up. So there's a racket going on. So that's why taking on the people who are basically running these services is the first priority of the next Labour government, and we'll do it.
Ben, I want to
Thanks,
return
Martin.
from-
Yeah, so there was actually a vote in the House of Commons this week that Liberal Democrat MP Tim Farron tabled, and I think you voted against it,
I
Cheryl,
think that- we're
to
talking about
criminalise sewage bosses that refuse to clean
That
up our
was nothing
sewage
to do
works.
in relation. It wasn't in relation to this.
Consistently voted against
It
any
wasn't
measures
in
to
But
stop
Cheryl, just
sewage
before we
dumping.
move
Cheryl.
on, to
Yeah.
take the point that's coming from both your opponents, which is the government says it's got harder on the water companies. They're saying, but not anything like hard enough.
Well, I mean, turning South West Water into a Ben and Jerry's, I think, is a.
I don't think that's quite the
is a
point that I made,
policy
Cheryl.
that is quite.
I'll explain it to you
quite an
later. It's a bit more nuanced
aspirational
than
thing,
that.
but I
It would
think
do well with the kids.
You know, yeah, they would, I suppose. At the end of the day, Tudor has come out with, we're going to take up Jeremy Corbyn's policy. I'd like to know what
What's
Keir
your
Starmer
answer?
thinks about that.
What's your answer, Cheryl? Because you keep asking Tudor and
we
myself,
are really,
what have you done?
Labour isn't doing that.
we are really becoming more tough on the water companies. But on this particular instance, to bring us back to the topic, there is an inquiry. We need to find out exactly what's happened and allow that inquiry to take place, which is the responsible thing for anybody to ask for. And then, if we have hard questions, I will be pressing the government as well as Victoria Atkins to make sure that we get those answers.
There are worrying implications here from the Camelford scandal in the 80s.
Okay, I appreciate that.
You probably can't even remember the Camelford scandal in the 80s.